I left the house at 7,014 on a Tuesday morning with my coffee in one hand and my work bag over my shoulder, thinking about nothing except the deposition I had to prep by noon. I was already at the end of our street waiting for my lift when I reached into my bag for my earbuds and felt nothing but lip balm, a granola bar, and the cold, flat surface of my tablet. No earbuds. I pictured them exactly where I'd left them, on the bathroom counter, still in their case, still charging. I told myself it wasn't worth going back. I could survive a 20-minute ride without music. But the deposition was going to run 4 hours, and I needed those earbuds. I canceled the lift and walked back. Our house in Lincoln Park has a side entrance through the utility room, shorter than the front door if you're coming from the street. I used to joke to my husband that it was my secret door, the one only I knew about. That morning, I slipped through it quietly because I didn't want to wake him. He told me the night before he was sleeping in that his first client call wasn't until 10. That's when I heard his voice. He was in the kitchen, not 10 feet away, speaking low and steady, the tone he used when he was closing a negotiation. My husband is very good at that voice. I used to love listening to it. "The paperwork is already signed," he said. "She has no idea. As long as you keep your mouth shut until it clears, we're looking at 60 days, maybe less. After that, she's not going to be a problem anymore." I stood completely still in the utility room, one hand still on the door. A pause. Someone else was talking. I couldn't hear the other side. Then my husband again, "Because she trusts me. That's why it works. She has never once questioned anything I've put in front of her." Another pause. "Don't call this number again until I reach out to you first. We stick to the plan." The call ended. I heard him set his phone on the counter. I heard the refrigerator open, the clink of a glass, the pour of orange juice. Ordinary Tuesday morning sounds. The sounds of a man who had just finished a conversation about making me not a problem anymore and was now having breakfast. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. My bag was still on my shoulder, and the earbuds I'd come back for were one room away and completely irrelevant now. I waited until I heard him walk toward the bedroom. Then I slipped back out the side door, walked to the corner, and called another lift. My name is Maya Reeves. I'm 31 years old. I'm a paralegal at Denton & Cole, a mid-sized litigation firm in Chicago. I've spent 6 years watching attorneys build cases from almost nothing. A phone record here, a financial document there, a single inconsistency that unravels everything. I know how evidence works. I know what it looks like when someone is hiding something, and I know what it looks like when they're very, very good at it. My husband, Daniel, is 36. He runs his own financial consulting firm, 3 employees, mostly small business clients. We met at a fundraiser for a children's literacy program 4 years ago. He was funny and attentive and remembered on our 3rd date that I'd mentioned my grandmother's name was Eloise. He'd suggested we go to a restaurant called Eloise on the north side, just because of that. I thought that was the most thoughtful thing anyone had ever done for me. We got married 2 years ago, small ceremony, 28 guests, a restaurant buyout in Wicker Park. My older brother Marcus walked me down the aisle because our father passed away when I was 19. My mother cried through the entire thing. I had been happy. I had genuinely believed I was happy. I sat in the back of the lift and pulled up my phone's call log. Daniel had been on his phone at 7:16 a.m. The call lasted 4 minutes and 22 seconds. I had no way to see the number he'd called, but I remembered something he'd said the night before, something I hadn't thought twice about at the time. "I'm going to need Marcus to sign some updated documents for the business trust next week. Routine stuff." Marcus, my brother who was on the other end of that call. I know this because Marcus has a habit. He makes this small sound at the back of his throat when he's listening and wants the other person to know he understands, almost like a quiet, I heard it twice through the gap in Daniel's sentences. A sound so specific, so Marcus, that there was no version of the world where I was wrong. My brother was on that call. My brother knew about the plan. My brother was being told to keep his mouth shut. I stared out the window as the city moved past me. I thought about what "she's not going to be a problem anymore" actually meant. 3 months ago, Daniel had come to me with what he called an estate planning opportunity. He'd had a meeting with a financial advisor who specialized in life insurance trusts, and he thought it made sense for us to update our coverage. Married couple, 2 incomes, we should protect each other. He'd laid out the paperwork on the kitchen table one Sunday afternoon. Clean, professional, pre-tabbed where I needed to sign. I'd read through it, or I thought I had. I was prepping for a trial that week and my mind was somewhere else. I had signed. I did not know, as I sat in that lift, exactly what I had signed, but I knew it involved life insurance, and I knew my husband was telling someone, my brother, that within 60 days I would not be a problem anymore. I put my phone in my bag and looked at my hands. They were completely steady. That surprised me. I thought I would shake, would cry, would have to ask the driver to pull over, but I felt something cold and clear settle over me instead. It was the same feeling I got when I was handed a complicated case file and told to find the opening. Not panic. Clarity. Daniel thought he'd married someone who trusted him. He was right. I had trusted him. But trusting someone and being unable to think without them are 2 very different things, and I had spent 6 years learning how to build a case. I went to work. I sat at my desk and I opened the deposition prep file, and I did my job for 4 hours, because falling apart in the middle of the Denton & Cole offices would not help me. At lunch, I told my supervisor I had a personal appointment and took the elevator down to the lobby. The first thing I did was call the insurance company. I had the policy number from the paperwork. I'd photographed every page before I signed, a habit I developed working in litigation. The customer service representative confirmed that a policy had been activated in my name 3 months ago. A $2 million term life policy. Beneficiary Daniel Reeves. Then she told me something else. There was a second policy, an older one taken out 18 months before we were married. Daniel had listed me as a contingent beneficiary at the time, but 8 weeks ago he had removed my name entirely. A form had been submitted, signed by Daniel as the primary account holder. The primary beneficiary on that policy was now my brother Marcus. I sat on a bench outside a Walgreens and asked the representative to repeat that. Marcus, my brother, who had been on that phone call this morning, who had told Daniel he would keep his mouth shut. My brother wasn't just involved in whatever Daniel was planning. My brother was going to benefit from it. I thanked the representative and ended the call. I think there are moments in life where you understand, all at once, that the story you have been living is not the story that was actually happening. The wedding in Wicker Park, the restaurant named Eloise, the 4 years of believing I was known and loved by someone who saw me. All of it true in its own way, and all of it also beside the point, because Daniel had been looking at me the entire time and calculating something I couldn't see. And Marcus, who had called me every Sunday since our father died, Marcus, who showed up with groceries the week I had the flu, Marcus, who gave the toast at my wedding and made our mother cry for the 2nd time that day. Marcus had decided that whatever Daniel was offering was worth more than I was. I went back to the office. I finished the deposition prep. I answered 3 emails. At 4:30, I packed my bag and told my supervisor I'd see her tomorrow. I did not go home. Instead, I went to a UPS store 2 miles from our house and rented a mailbox. Then I went to my bank, not the joint account Daniel and I shared, but the personal savings account I had kept in my name alone. Another litigation habit, another thing I had done without knowing why I might need it, and I withdrew $3,000 in cash. Then I drove to the home of the one person I was certain Daniel had not spoken to. My mother lives in Oak Park, 20 minutes from the city. She was in her garden when I pulled up, still in her work clothes from her shift at the hospital administration office, deadheading the roses she'd been growing for 15 years. She took one look at my face and told me to come inside. I told her everything. She sat across from me at her kitchen table and did not say a word until I finished. Then she reached over and covered my hands with hers. "What do you need?" she said. That was all. Not "Are you sure?" Or maybe you misunderstood, or Daniel has always seemed so. Just, "What do you need?" I told her I needed to stay with her for a few days. I told her I needed to figure out what I had actually signed 3 months ago. I told her I could not go back to that house until I understood exactly what was in motion. She made up the guest room and cooked pasta and didn't ask any more questions until I was ready. That night, I sat at her kitchen table with my laptop and the photographs I had taken of the insurance documents. I read every page this time, slowly, the way I read case files. The life insurance trust was structured in a way that seemed standard at first glance, the kind of language a non-specialist would nod through. But I had spent enough time in a law office to know what I was looking at. The policy was legitimate, the coverage was real, but there was a clause buried in an addendum about accelerated disbursement in cases of disappearance or declared death. 60 days. If I was missing for 60 days, the disbursement process could begin. Not murdered. Not obviously killed. Disappeared. I stared at that word for a long time. Daniel wasn't planning to make me look like I'd been killed. He was planning to make me look like I had left. And Marcus, who would be the person my mother called, who would be the family representative, who everyone would turn to. Marcus would tell people that I had seemed stressed lately, that my marriage had been struggling, that he wasn't entirely surprised. He would be sad and believable and completely in place, and within 60 days, the process would begin. After that, she's not going to be a problem anymore. He didn't mean he was going to hurt me. He meant he was going to erase me, make me disappear, make it look voluntary, let the clock run, collect. And with Marcus in place as the grieving brother who validated the narrative, no one would look too hard. I closed my laptop. I looked out my mother's kitchen window at the dark backyard, at the roses she couldn't see but had grown there for 15 years. I had been so focused on, she's not going to be a problem anymore, that I had assumed the worst. But this was, in some ways, more calculated. Harder to prove. Harder to stop, unless I stopped it first. I went to work the next morning as if nothing had happened. I texted Daniel from the train, "Staying at Mom's tonight. She's not feeling well. Don't wait up." He texted back a heart and a "Give her my love." Perfect. Warm. Completely practiced. I spent my lunch break at the county clerk's office. I had a colleague at the firm, a woman named Patricia who had been doing this work for 22 years, who had once told me that financial fraud leaves traces the way water leaves stains. You don't always see it right away, but the mark is there. I had already identified one trace, the insurance beneficiary change. Now I needed more. I submitted a records request for any LLCs or business entities registered in Daniel's name in the past 18 months. It would take a few days. In the meantime, I went back to my photographs of the trust documents and looked at the attorney name on the filing. It was not Daniel's usual attorney. It was a firm in Naperville I had never heard of, a single practitioner operation. I looked them up. The attorney was named Gerald Foss. He had a general practice license, estate planning, small business, some family law. Nothing alarming on the surface, but his office shared a suite address with a financial planning firm, and that financial planning firm had, as one of its principals, a man named David Carver. David Carver was Marcus's college roommate. I sat very still at my desk and thought about the timeline. Marcus and David, college roommates, still connected. David, whose firm shared space with the attorney who drew up the trust that would allow Daniel to begin collecting on my disappearance. Daniel, who had met Marcus through me and had spent 4 years building a relationship with my brother that I had found touching. I had thought Daniel was close to Marcus because he was trying to be part of my family. He was close to Marcus because Marcus was useful. I didn't call the police that day. I had no evidence they could act on. An overheard phone call and a life insurance clause was not enough. I knew this because I had watched attorneys try to build cases on less, and I had watched those cases fall apart. What I needed was something that showed intent, something that showed coordination, something that made clear that this was not a misunderstanding or an innocent financial decision, but a deliberate, planned operation involving at least 3 people. I needed Daniel to tell me himself, not because I wanted to confront him, because I wanted to record it. Illinois is a 2-party consent state for recordings, which means I couldn't just tape a conversation without his knowledge. But there's an exception for conversations where you have a reasonable belief that a crime is being planned against you. I had spent enough time around attorneys to know this was a gray area that had broken both ways in court. I needed something cleaner. So I did something that felt reckless and turned out to be exactly right. I called Daniel. Not from my cell. From a burner phone I had bought at a Walgreens on my lunch break, using cash. I called him at 11 a.m. And I disguised my voice, not dramatically, just slightly, a register lower than usual, and I told him I was calling from Gerald Foss's office with a paperwork question about the trust addendum. Daniel did not hesitate. He did not say, "I'll need to call you back," or "let me check with my attorney." He said, "Is this about the 60-day clause? Because we've been over this. The language is fine. She's not going to be looking for it. She signed everything without reading it." He thought he was talking to someone on his team. He had just told me, in his own voice, that he knew I hadn't read the documents, that he had counted on it, that the 60-day clause was intentional. I thanked him and said we'd be in touch and ended the call. I sat in the parking garage where I'd gone to make the call, and I allowed myself 30 seconds of something that wasn't quite crying but was close to it. Not because I was afraid, because I had loved this man. Because he had sat across from me at a restaurant named Eloise, and I had believed that meant something. Then I saved the recording, uploaded it to 2 cloud accounts, emailed it to myself at my work address, and drove back to the office. Over the next 4 days, I built the file. The records request came back. Daniel had registered a new LLC 8 months ago, a holding company, with Marcus listed as a co-managing member. The entity had received a transfer of funds 3 weeks after I signed the insurance documents, funds that had originated from our joint savings account, which Daniel had access to alone, since I had trusted him to manage our finances. I had been so focused on my career that I had handed him everything. I made copies of every document. I stored them in 3 places: my mother's house, the UPS mailbox, and a locked drawer at work that only I had the key to. Then I walked into the office of Robert Denton, the senior partner at my firm, and I closed the door and I told him what I had. Robert Denton has handled financial fraud cases for 30 years. He did not look surprised. He looked focused. "You need a criminal attorney and a forensic accountant," he said. Today, he made 2 calls. By the end of the afternoon, I had both. The criminal attorney, a woman named Claire Ashford, listened to everything without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "You've done better preliminary work than most investigators. Don't go home. Don't contact your brother. Don't give Daniel any indication that anything has changed." I told her I had been going to work and texting Daniel normally for 4 days. She looked at me with something that was almost impressed. "Good, keep doing that. We're going to move quickly." The forensic accountant, a man named Thomas Yee, started pulling financial records that same day using a court order Claire had expedited through a contact at the federal prosecutor's office. What he found over the following 2 weeks was a pattern that had started not 3 months ago, not 8 months ago, but 14 months ago, 2 months after our wedding. Daniel had been systematically moving money, small amounts at first, below reporting thresholds, from the joint account to the holding LLC, then larger amounts as the months went on. He had also taken out a second mortgage on our house using a document that appeared to have my signature on it. I had not signed that document. My signature had been forged. Claire presented all of this to the U.S. Attorney's Office on a Thursday morning. By Thursday afternoon, they had issued warrants. Daniel was arrested at his office at 3 p.m. He did not see it coming. Marcus was arrested at his apartment 40 minutes later. I know because my mother called me. The police had reached out to her as part of the witness notification process, and she was sitting in her kitchen when she called me, her voice so careful and so controlled that I knew she was working very hard not to fall apart. "It's done," she said. "Are you all right?" I was sitting in Claire's office when she called. I had a cup of coffee in my hand that had gone cold an hour ago. "I'm all right," I said, and I meant it in the way you mean something when the crisis is past and the grief hasn't arrived yet. David Carver, the college roommate, cooperated immediately when approached by investigators. He had not known the full scope of what Daniel was planning. He had helped structure the financial entity believing it was legitimate tax planning and had only gradually understood what it was being used for. His cooperation put the federal case together faster than it might have otherwise. Gerald Foss, the attorney, lost his license and faced separate disciplinary proceedings. The trial took 8 months to schedule and 6 days to complete. Claire Ashford was methodical and precise in a way I recognized and respected. She built the case the way I would have built it, from the documents out, letting the paper tell the story before the witnesses ever took the stand. Daniel's attorney tried to argue that the financial moves were legitimate business decisions, that the insurance policy was standard estate planning, that the phone call I had recorded was taken out of context. He suggested that I was a disgruntled spouse who had constructed a narrative around innocent actions. Claire played the recording. Daniel's voice in his own kitchen on a Tuesday morning, saying she has never once questioned anything I've put in front of her. The jury deliberated for 9 hours. Guilty on all counts: wire fraud, financial fraud, conspiracy, forgery, and attempted insurance fraud. Daniel was sentenced to 14 years. He will serve at least 11 before he is eligible for parole. He is 40 years old. He will be 51 at minimum before he walks out. Marcus pled guilty to conspiracy and financial fraud in exchange for a reduced sentence, 4 years, eligible for parole in 2. He gave a statement at sentencing in which he said he had told himself the whole time that Daniel wouldn't actually go through with it, that it would stop before anything happened to me. Claire showed the jury the LLC transfer records, dated 14 months into our marriage. Daniel had been going through with it from the very beginning. At sentencing, the judge asked if I wanted to make a victim impact statement. I had written one. I had rewritten it 4 times. In the end, I stood up and I said, I trusted 2 people who had decided, before I understood what was happening, that I was worth more gone than present. I am still here. I intend to stay here. And I would like the record to reflect that I found out because I went back for my earbuds. There was a sound in the courtroom that I can only describe as the room exhaling. I sold the house in Lincoln Park 6 months after the trial. The proceeds, after the mortgage was resolved through the fraud recovery process, paid off most of my student loans. I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in Logan Square with good light and no history. My mother calls me every Sunday now. We don't talk about Daniel or Marcus if she can help it. We talk about the roses, about her book club, about a documentary she watched that she thinks I would like. Some Sundays I drive to Oak Park and sit in her garden with coffee while she works. And we don't talk at all. I went back to work at Denton & Cole. Robert Denton, when I returned, had added a framed print to the wall of his office, a quote from a legal scholar I recognized, something about the value of documentation. He didn't mention why he'd put it there. He didn't need to. I see a therapist every 2 weeks. Her name is Dr. Tu, Simone Okafor, and she has, on more than one occasion, pointed out that I process things by working rather than feeling, and that eventually the feeling catches up. She's right. Some nights it does. Some nights I sit in my Logan Square apartment and I think about the fundraiser where I met Daniel and the restaurant named Eloise and the way he'd said you're not going to be a problem anymore, in the same tone he used to order coffee. And I let myself sit with the grief of it for exactly as long as I need to. Then I get up. I don't know what happens with Marcus. He's been in contact through our mother. Careful messages, nothing that asks for anything. I haven't responded. Not yet. Maybe someday there will be something to say. Maybe there won't be. I know that his pain about our father was real and that Daniel found it and used it like a crowbar. And I know also that Marcus made choices, many choices, over many months that he could have unmade at any point. Knowing both of those things at once is something I'm still learning to carry. What I can tell you is this: Daniel was very good at his plan. He was patient and he was precise, and he'd arranged it so that by the time anything happened to me, the story would already be written. Stressed young woman, struggling marriage, just walked away. He had my brother's voice to confirm it. He had my signature, or something that looked like it, on a document I hadn't signed. He had 60 days and an insurance clause and a holding company with clean paperwork. What he didn't have was the version of me that goes back for things she forgot. The version that takes photographs of documents out of habit. The version that spent 6 years in a law office learning what evidence looks like and what it doesn't. The version that sat in the back of a lift on a Tuesday morning and felt something cold and clear settle over her and thought, I know how to build this case. I have a small scar on my left hand from when I was 9 years old and fell off my bike on the driveway of our house in Oak Park. My father cleaned it out and bandaged it and told me that the way you know you've healed is not that the mark is gone, it's that it stops hurting to touch. Most days, it doesn't hurt to touch anymore. Most days I wake up in my Logan Square apartment and I make coffee and I look at the good light coming through the windows and I think, I'm still here. That's the thing they didn't account for, that I would still be here building something from what they left me. It turns out that's enough. It turns out that's more than enough. Thank you for being here and listening to this. I know it was a lot to sit with. If it reached you somewhere true, I'd be grateful if you shared it or left a comment below. It means more than you know. And if you've ever had a moment where something small, forgetting your keys, going back for your phone, turning around for a jacket, changed the entire direction of your life, I want to hear about it. Tell me in the comments. I read everyone. Stay safe. Trust what you notice. And I'll see you in the next story. Looking back at everything that happened, I keep returning to one simple truth. The people who planned to erase me were counting on a version of me that no longer existed. They had studied the Maya who signed documents without finishing them, who handed over financial access out of love, who trusted instinctively because she believed trust was something you gave first and verified later. They built an entire architecture around that woman. What they didn't account for was the Maya who had spent 6 years watching what happens when people believe they've covered every angle. Because that's the thing about a truly careful plan. It's only as strong as its understanding of the person it's designed to defeat. What I've come to understand is that consequences don't announce themselves. They accumulate quietly, the way Daniel accumulated leverage, the way Marcus accumulated silence month after month, telling himself it would stop before it went too far. Every choice they made pulled the next one forward. The LLC, the forged signature, the insurance clause, the phone call on a Tuesday morning, none of those things happened in isolation. Each one was the result of an earlier decision left uncorrected. That is how betrayal works. Not in a single terrible moment, but in a long chain of smaller moments where someone chose comfort over honesty or money over conscience and kept choosing it until the chain was too heavy to carry back. I am not angry anymore, or at least not in the way I was in those first weeks. What I feel now is something closer to clarity. I understand that I was not naive. I was trusting, and those are different things. Naivety is a lack of information. Trust is a decision you make with the information you have, and at the time, I made it reasonably. What changed everything was not that I stopped trusting people, it's that I learned to trust myself first. My instincts in that utility room, my hands which did not shake, my mind which went to evidence before it went to grief. There is a version of that morning where I walk back to the corner, call another lift, tell myself I misunderstood, and say nothing. I have thought about that version often. That woman would have disappeared within 60 days, and everyone who knew her would have been handed a story that made just enough sense to believe. The fact that I didn't take that path wasn't luck. It was the result of years of showing up, of learning, of building a set of skills that had nothing to do with survival, until suddenly they had everything to do with it. That is what I want to leave you with. The work you do every day, the habits, the attention, the knowledge you accumulate without knowing why, that is not separate from who you are when it matters most. It is exactly who you are. Character is not what you perform in a crisis. It is what you've been building in every ordinary moment before the crisis arrives. Maya didn't survive because she was lucky. She survived because she had been paying attention her whole life, and when it counted, she knew how to use what she'd learned. Whatever you are building right now, your skills, your integrity, your willingness to face hard things clearly, keep building it. You don't know yet which Tuesday morning is going to need it.